One thing you want to do when you're working with yellow is make sure to change your water fairly frequently. If you want beautiful, pure color, you need to have clean water as you make your color mixes. The other thing I should mention is that when I'm working with yellow, you can see here on the top of my paint some other colors kind of sitting on top. I squeeze my paint into my palette and let it dry so that when I'm pulling out color to mix, this color sits on the surface of the paint. It's really easy to lift that off and clean it up. And I just lifted it up with my thirsty brush. I can then rinse it out in my paint water, or if I really want to keep it, not lose any of that beautiful pigment, I'm just throwing it here in my palette. And then I have a clean surface of my painting, of my palette again. This one has a puddle of green in it, and it's kind of seeping in around the edges. So I'm going to use a thirsty brush like a sponge. And just the point of my brush can get into those edges where that green is pooling, and I can quickly clean it up. And right now, while it's damp, I just suck it up with that thirsty brush. If it has the chance to dry on this, it's still going to sit on the surface of the palette, and it doesn't soak in and dirty much of the paint. So I don't really worry too much. And now my water really needs a clean. So I've cleaned my water, because that's what we do here, and I'm going to just throw some down on the paper. We're going to play with some beautiful yellows here. And what I like to do when I'm doing a little warm-up or getting started is just throw down a fun brush stroke. We're going to use up some of that yellow that I like, that I didn't want to lose. Add some more water and just let things flow. I'm using indigo paper today. This is a cold press 300 pound, I believe. I like their heavier weight paper. That's diluted yellow because it was from the palette here. We're going to use some in full saturation too, and let it just splash out a little bit. Doing a big brush stroke like this, throwing some color around, is a really good opportunity for you to practice brush handling. You can see I hold my brush really high up on the handle. I want to have a loose stroke, and I want to flick my brush with a really light touch. There are times when I use the side of the brush just to pull color, or spread it in a wider swath. And then when I want, some interesting marks, that's when I might use the point of my brush. And I'm just kind of dancing it all over the paper in a very free way. This is a really good way to loosen up and to try to think and feel connected to your painting and just have a little sense of freedom. And now that I've thrown that yellow down, we're going to put another color on the paper. And I'm going to go over to our beautiful complementary colors. We're going to put the Carbazole Violet back. And instead, we're going to go towards, no, that one's too crazy, the Moon Glow. This beautiful shade of violet is a mix of a blue and a red. So it's going to be a bit of a neutral when it mixes with my yellow. But it also has a beautiful color identity of its own. And because most of my paper is wet right now, we get to explore the movement of wet and wet painting. And I'm only doing right now kind of what the painting is telling me it wants. In other words, I have this beautiful movement on my paper, and rather than try to push it in a new way, I'm just kind of looking at the painting and putting a dark mark where I feel like a dark mark might look good. And a little extra water to let things flow. And now I'm second guessing my choice and thinking maybe I should have used a brighter color with my yellow, but this is just a place to explore and see what we get. And you can see that as the color flows down, we're getting a brownish kind of neutral. And I think I'm actually going to add I'm going to erase some of the white marks that are down here, that where the dry paper is still sitting, in just a minute. How do we erase white marks from dry paper? With water. And Moonglow is a color, knowing Moonglow, it's a color that really is more beautiful when you allow it to flow, because then the two pigments that make it up get the chance to separate and show their own individual color identities, and that's really beautiful. I'm holding this upright with my hand, but we're going to actually put a block behind it so the paper is tilted on its own and I don't get a sore wrist. And I am really liking this shape that's created here, but it feels incomplete. Do you see how it's starting to curve? But I feel like it needs to go the rest of the way across the paper. So let's do that right now. This is again looking at the painting and feeling what I think is being suggested as the next option. And the more you paint, the more you're going to have ideas of what can be achieved in your loose painting at these different stages of development. So right now at this stage, I know what the paper can handle as in terms of how much moisture, how much pigment, what kind of brush strokes are going to move the best. I'm getting some interesting lines here. Because I've changed my paper, I'm going to get some different things happening as well as different paper handles pigment and water in different ways. So if you're trying indigo art paper for the first time, I would encourage you to give it lots of time, get to know it. It is not the same as painting with the industry standards, you know, Arches, Saunders, Fabriano, and so forth. Handmade papers have very strong texture and handmade feel. So now I've created this beautiful curve of the violet. Over here where the pigment's kind of flowing down, I can actually see the blue is left behind from the moon glow. And that makes me wonder if I let some water push pigment in these areas, I can create other little rivulets of that blue showing up. So I'm going to do that. Give it a try. Add a little extra water, let things flow. Might get some watermarks as well. So we're not working with yellow right now, we're just focusing on the moon glow, but I actually want to pull in another yellow. Let's try a warm yellow, that Aussie red gold, and see what adding that into the painting does for the mood of our painting, for the feeling that we're getting, and how does it mix with the moon glow. Introducing a new color is always a little bit of a risky venture because a change of color changes the mood as well. I'm still following that original path of dark by adding this new color, but not changing the movement, at least not yet. Hopefully I can not change the painting too drastically, just kind of keep taking it in the direction that it's suggested from the beginning. Let's see what happens if I add some of that orange down in here. And what happens if I spatter? And I think I want to go bolder with that orange. I like the light that it's creating, and I'm not really in love with this big splash of yellow there, so we're just going to cover it right up. And I like the little lines that are here. If I do some of those kind of lines here, well, maybe not right there, but up in this part of the painting, I wonder how it would echo and accentuate or create rhythm with what's already happening on the paper. And I'm saying I wonder if, because that's really my painting process. When I'm painting loosely and exploring exploring a new painting, I have to ask what if. There's always an unknown, and I have to let the painting guide me as every brushstroke I put on the paper changes the possibilities that lie ahead. And you know how I really like that blue that was showing up in here? I'm thinking I need to add more, and I'm gonna throw some cobalt teal on the painting, and just because I can. So we're kind of diverting from exploring the color yellow, but cobalt teal goes with everything, so. And I might have to do a whole video devoted to this color one day. Cobalt teal really does seem like it goes with everything. I haven't found one yet that it doesn't go with, and it really beautifully dances on top of a dark wash. It's just really fun to play with. Okay, let's go back to the moon glow. We've got this beautiful sunlit feeling, and I think the other thing that's benefiting this painting is that I started with the yellow underpainting. Even though the original yellow has gotten covered by a lot of other colors and lines, that yellow underpainting gives us an underlying glow that will never disappear. And using the moon glow right now, I'm adding detail, I'm adding line, and I'm adding a dark value to create contrast. And by placing that contrast in the areas where I want the viewer's eye to travel, so I want someone to see this bright yellow splash, and then I want them to follow this curving flow. And I can encourage that with the lines and marks that I create with my brush. And I just saw a feather there, and I don't know if I should have painted that, but giving it a try. So continually when I'm painting, I'm just really experimenting. I'm in an exploration for what if, what's this painting going to become? And I'm wide open to the possibilities that it could really become almost anything. I'm just lifting some excess moisture from the edges of the page. And because my paper is curving upwards and tilted, the excess moisture flows to the outside. Using this brush, I can use the side of the brush or the point to make my dark marks. And it creates some really beautiful organic shapes. That one's a little too bold. So we add some water to move it around a little bit. Oh, I just love making lines. And that's another thing I look for. The things that I love doing in my paintings, I try to find ways to do more of them. I think this one could be called something like Gypsy Flower or something. It's got this amazing, vibrant dance of energy. Little Aussie red gold spattered to create some warmth in this very cool band of color. And I think I'm going to stop. I'm really liking the movement in this piece, and it was really fun to play with, just starting with those two complementary colors, the yellow and the violet, and then really following the direction the painting was encouraging me to go. When you're working with yellow, look for ways to mix it. Look for ways to tone it down if it's too bright by adding its complement, to warm it up if it's too cool by adding a hint of red or magenta, to give yourself a varied and beautiful range of greens, adding blue. There's just so much you can do with yellow, and it's a lot of fun to experiment with color, to make your own color recipes that you can use in your paintings over and over again. When I find a color combination that I love, I use it to death. I explore all its many variations, and it brings me a lot of joy and adds a lot of individuality to my paintings as well. When my paintings are hanging together in a gallery, you can tell that they come from the same artist, often because of the color family. They all seem to be connected by color, hints of one color that carry through the entire body of work. And it's totally okay to do that. It's a really good way to express your individuality in your paintings.